Satan had intended to destroy the Jews before God's promise to send a Saviour could be fulfilled, but he failed. It was while the Roman Empire was at its peak that the clock ran out on his efforts, and the time arrived for the ultimate fulfillment of God's promise to Abraham and Sarah, that the whole world would be blessed through their descendants. Jesus, the Messiah, was born. The Jews had made it. They had survived Satan's attempts at seduction and destruction. They had survived the Plan A's and the Plan B's. They had survived the persecutions, invasions, the periods of captivity and general struggles that came with the territory of being God's chosen people in a world full of satanic enemies. The time had come for the serpent's head to be crushed, as prophesied way back in Genesis 3. Jesus crushed the head of the serpent, but his heel was bruised in the process. He was crucified at the hands of the Romans, but then rose from the dead on the third day, defeating sin and crushing death. He restored man to God and repaired the disconnection that had taken place when Adam and Eve had sinned in the Garden of Eden. In the person of Jesus, the world saw God in human form. We saw his character and nature more clearly than we ever had before. He corrected the errors that had crept into the Jews' religion and revealed and established a new covenant. Jesus' arrival marked a new phase in God's plan. Having spent the Old Testament years concentrating on building a relationship with the Jews and revealing himself to them in a world filled with false Babylonian gods, it was time for those people, those early Christians, to now take the responsibility of introducing the God they knew to the rest of the world, to invade the surrounding pagan territories with the truth about God. Jesus came to create and train a band of followers that would take the good news of salvation to the world. He told them to then make disciples of others. In other words, they were then to train others in the same way he had trained them, who were then to train others to do the same. By this method, the gospel message exploded exponentially across the world. These early Christians, led by the apostles, set off on missionary journeys, taking the good news to the ends of the earth, and people believed wherever they went. Hundreds and thousands were added to the numbers of believers daily. A huge sea change occurred as Christianity broke through. God's people were suddenly on the offensive, spreading light into a dark world. 2 points to take from this. God had spent the Old Testament years introducing himself to the Jews so that they could then introduce him to the rest of us Gentiles. So a key point here is that nothing that God ever gives us is just for ourselves. Everything he gives us is for the benefit of others. Secondly, for church leaders, notice how effective small groups are for explosive growth and really solid discipleship. If Jesus' 12 disciples followed his orders and made 12 disciples of their own, that would be 144 disciples. If they each had 12 of their own, that would be 1,728. If they each had 12, that would be 20,736. If they each had 12, that would be 248,832, and if they each had 12, that would be 2,985,984 disciples. So within 5 phases we've gone from 12 Christians to almost 3 million. After this Know Your Enemy series is finished, the next step is to know how to engage with and defeat that enemy, so we may go into that at a later stage.